Thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell us how you came to join WikiLeaks?
Well, Julian Assange was working quite a lot in Iceland in the winter of 2009 and 2010, and after actually WikiLeaks produced a tremendously important leak in 2009, which exposed the corruption within the Icelandic banks, and it was a sensational story in Iceland and shed a light on why the entire banking system in Iceland collapsed in 2008. I met him in that period when he was there in Iceland. He was working, among other things, on supporting the IMMI project, the Icelandic Modern Media Initiative. And we befriended. He showed me the collateral murder video. I was at the time working for the state television in Iceland and, of course, offered my help, and it became basically a joint project between the Icelandic state television and WikiLeaks, and joined then WikiLeaks full-time in the summer of 2010.
And how's it been for you? You've been described as sort of the second public face of WikiLeaks, having to step into this much more spotlighted role, so to speak, at such a difficult time with WikiLeaks. How have you been finding it?
I've been finding it extremely interesting. I mean, any journalist would find it interesting to take part in the biggest leaks in history that have basically transformed politics in certain areas, and it's been a total game changer. It's a paradigm change.
You're saying as a journalist what it's like working for them. What do you perceive as the other journalists' response? Because we've seen a lot of them doing a U-turn on WikiLeaks, on Julian Assange.
Well, I mean, there is very mixed feelings among journalists. I mean, we have worked with a lot of excellent journalists who understand the importance of WikiLeaks. We've also worked with other journalists and who have turned their backs on us, and we have felt a very strange animosity among a group of journalists as well. It is hard to say what exactly causes it, but many of them have been dishonest and spiteful in their covering of WikiLeaks.
Why do you think that is?
I have no idea, but it's extremely strange. It's disappointing to experience that for me as a journalist for more than 20 years, but it's a fact.
Okay, I want to talk to you about WikiLeaks as a whole. Do you think there's a concern there that the focus has moved away somewhat from the actual really important aspect of it, which is these incredible leaks, to actually this sort of idea about WikiLeaks as a whole and Julian Assange that's maybe overshadowing the more important aspect of it now? Does that concern you?
Well, I mean, the focus has always been an independent thing that we have not been able to always decide upon how it was handled. I mean, for example, the first project that I took part in, the collateral murder video release in April 2010, I was surprised by the fact that the biggest stories were actually on the leak itself, and secondly on Julian Assange. The fact that this is a video that is exposing a war crime got much lesser attention, and it still hasn't gotten the attention it deserves. But it's the media for you. The media will decide where the focus is, and that's the reality we live in.
And where do you see the future of WikiLeaks?
Oh, it's very hard. I mean, we have been starved of 95% of our funds. Julian Assange is facing his legal battles. We know that in Virginia there is a secret grand jury trying to find angles of bringing cases against Julian and/or possibly others in the organization. People that have and are supporting WikiLeaks are being harassed when they enter the U.S., even U.S. citizens. So it's hard to see where the future is, but I believe that despite everything, we look back at the accomplishments of WikiLeaks, so they are great in this period.
Do you see this as a battle between WikiLeaks and big corporations, governments?
I see this as a battle against corruption and lies and secrecy.
And who do you think is going to win?
Well, it's hard to say, but let's hope that Rupert Murdoch was right in the early 50s when he was an editor in Australia, where he wrote an editorial that in the race between truth and secrecy, truth will always win. I hope he remembers these words himself, but somehow I doubt it.
You're an investigative journalist in Iceland, which is perceived as being one of the world's strongest when it comes to the legal rights protected to whistleblowers. Why do you think it is that other countries aren't following suit?
Well, Iceland is on the path of changing the laws to make it a very strong shield for journalists and whistleblowers. It's a long-term project, but after the economic collapse in Iceland in 2008, which everybody was agreed was caused by lack of transparency and lack of information. So this is the nation was ready for a total overhaul of the legal system. It will take some time, but sometimes shocks like that in Iceland to the entire nation, a spectacular shock, a total meltdown in the economy, creates the right atmosphere for and a desire for improvement in this nature. One of the positive things that can come out of such situations.
But I suppose the shocks can also work the other way, because we've seen obviously the US and to some extent the UK reacting by sort of almost taking steps backwards. And there's a sense maybe that these big corporations that are now under threat, that the sort of transparency WikiLeaks would bring, fighting back against this now.
Yeah, I mean, that is certainly the trend. I mean, the situation in Iceland economically was extremely dire. I mean, it was a spectacular meltdown. I mean, the banking sector was 10 times the size of the local economy, 10 times the GDP of Iceland, and when it all collapsed over a few days, you can imagine the consequences. In other places, like here in Britain, I mean, there was a bailout, and basically the taxpayers had to shoulder the burden to keep the banks alive. They were too big to fail. And the situation is not all over yet. What we're seeing, of course, is this trend, which is, you mentioned, which is a very serious one, a crackdown in whistleblowing, which is totally contrary to the slow and gradual improvement in the legal environment that we've seen over the years. Not so long ago, I mean, a Whistleblower Protection Act was introduced here in the UK, a similar one in the US, but still we see basically a systematic crackdown now on whistleblowers, especially in the US, a very serious one, where an old act from 1917, the Espionage Act, is being used to haunt those who are basically blowing the whistle on illegalities and corruption, which is hurting the general public and costing the taxpayer a lot of money.
Okay, so we've seen that the legal protections afforded to potential whistleblowers can't necessarily be relied on at the moment. WikiLeaks is an organisation that promotes these anonymous leaks. What can you actually offer a whistleblower when they come to you? How much genuine protection can you offer them?
Well, I mean, the track record of WikiLeaks is impressive in that respect. I mean, nobody that has contributed material to WikiLeaks has been exposed by anything that WikiLeaks has done. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that stays like that. We are still working on reopening the anonymous electronic Dropbox, which allows people to submit information to us without it being traced to them in any manner. I mean, we would not be able to do it ourselves even. Let's hope that that will open soon. Meanwhile, we've had information delivered to us and published it anonymously, but it is a very, very important channel to have for whistleblowers.
Okay, thank you very much, Kristinn.